Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily update for January 5th, 2021. Well, what I'm about to report to you is not a conspiracy theory. It's not a wacky tinfoil point, but it actually comes from the pages of the military-industrial complex's favorite newspaper, the Washington Post. The Washington Post, over the weekend, had two editorials calling for shredding the U.S. Constitution. Now, many people out there had been talking about that this would be something that would be coming up with a potential Biden administration. Well, it's here. It's in the open. And I'm going to read you some segments from those editorials. But this editorial, these two editorials come out at precisely the moment when the Congress will be fulfilling its constitutional duties of adjudicating the Electoral College process to determine whether this was a fair and legitimate system that selected electors to choose the president. That's our Constitution. That's what the Washington Post is objecting to. Remember, the Washington Post is an intersection of the IT sector of Silicon Valley, of the Wall Street, City of London operation, the interlocking corporate cartels. That's who Jeff Bezos represents, and that's what's made him the richest man in the world. So here's the basic story. What they're saying is that the existing Constitution, as it pertains to voting rights, is outdated and must be changed. They call for eliminating Article 2, Sections 1 and 2 of the Constitution, where the role of state legislatures and electors is specified. Eliminate Article 1, Section 4 and the 12th Amendment to the Constitution to abolish the role of the Congress in the election of the president. They also want to change the 1887 Electoral Count Act to ensure Congress has no role in certifying electoral votes. There's also language that they're putting forward to make sure that there would not be a threat of third-party spoilers. So they're trying to put into the Constitution that there can only be two parties. And of course, these are two parties under the control of the war hawks and the neoliberals associated with the Washington Post. They also say that the role of states and counties in registering voters and keeping registration rolls should be replaced by universal registration, which would be done by what? The federal government. And they also argue that mail-in voting should be as near universal as possible, with nothing standing in the way of that. Now you can go check this out, Saturday and Sunday editorials in the Washington Post, calling for ripping apart and changing the Constitution when it comes to how elections are run. Now, why is this being done? Well, because in national elections in country after country, voters have chosen candidates who are not acceptable to the global establishment. The global establishment, which is putting forward a global bankers' dictatorship in the so-called Great Reset. And I'll have some more on that tomorrow because there's a lot of information coming out now on how Wall Street owns the entirety of the Biden would-be Treasury Department. But unless someone is an accepted candidate for the military-industrial complex and a yes person for the international bankers and cartels, they should not be allowed near the White House. That's essentially what the Washington Post is arguing. So the Constitution is at stake tomorrow, Wednesday, when the Congress meets. Now, what are they afraid of? Well, there will be objections filed to the Electoral College slates in a number of states, 4 minimally, maybe 6 states, the 6 battleground states that all went to Biden and gave him the election. There are objections that will be filed by anywhere from 50 to 140 congressmen, House members, and at least one senator, maybe as many as 4 or 5 others will join that senator, Josh Hawley, in insisting that the electoral slates not be certified because of fraud. And what would happen then is that each one of those states would be a subject of a 2-hour debate in each house of Congress, and then there would be a determination whether the objections will be upheld or thrown out. Now, given the Democratic control of much of the Congress, certainly the House of Representatives, but also the unanimous Democrats in the Senate, while the Republicans are split, it's unlikely that there would be a change through that. Now, the other proposal comes from Senator Cruz and at least 10 others, citing the 1877 Hayes-Tilden precedent, where there were charges of fraud in Florida, South Carolina, and Louisiana, and a commission was set up with 5 senators, 5 representatives, and 5 members of the Supreme Court to determine which electoral slates should be certified. Now, should that happen this time, it's very likely that the Electoral College vote would be turned around and President Trump would be declared the winner. That's the immediate target of the Washington Post. But the longer term target is to take the power away from you, the voter, who can act through your state legislators to make sure the vote is kept honest and as a sacred institution of our republic. So this discussion that will take place before the Congress tomorrow and maybe go on into Thursday is extremely important. And it's, I can only urge you to think about what gives Jeff Bezos and his newspaper the power to continue to assert that President Trump was a puppet of Putin, that Russia meddled, that Russia hacked, that the United States must stay in these permanent wars, that we must have a global reset. We must adopt ourselves to the Paris Climate Accord, which means shut down industry and energy production in the United States. The American people don't want that, but the owners of the Washington Post do, and the military-industrial complex does want that. And that's what this fight is all about. Now, additionally, we talked about the Assange ruling yesterday. There's more information on that, which I just want to go through briefly, because it's still essential to put the pressure on President Trump in the midst of all this other fighting, that he has to pardon Julian Assange. The judge in London ruled that the charges against him under the Espionage Act by the United States government were in good faith, and that what he did would not be protected by his freedom of speech. What did he do? He published documents which confirmed that war crimes were committed by military and contractors of the U.S. government under the policies of Bush Jr. and Barack Obama. What he did was tell the truth. And for that, he's been held in a prison since April 2019. And they'd like to keep him there permanently. Now, what the judge ruled is there's nothing wrong with the charges against him. In fact, maybe he should be charged under the British Official Secrets Act as well. But she rejected his extradition to the United States, which the U.S. government had requested, because she said that he's at a high risk of suicide because of depression and because of his physical conditions. Now, what this means is that journalism, the First Amendment, the freedom of the press, the freedom of speech, is not recognized by this court in London, nor is it recognized by the U.S. Department of Justice. And that's the importance of the Assange case. If they postpone this, because the U.S. government will appeal, because they want to pursue this, because they want to protect the war criminals from the Bush and Obama administration, who carried out illegal wars based on lies, which cost American lives, which cost taxpayers trillions of dollars. They want to protect that because they intend under Biden to continue those policies and escalate. That's what the Assange situation is about. And when you add Snowden to that, it's about attacking the surveillance state that was set up after 9/11. So the Assange pardon is urgent, not just to protect President Trump or to protect journalists, but to protect the truth and the idea that governments must be transparent and must be truthful. So you put these two things together, the assault on the Constitution advocated by the Washington Post and the continuation of the persecution of Julian Assange, and you can see that everybody is facing very dangerous circumstances in the future. So I would urge you, get on the phone with your legislators today and your congressmen today to demand that they accept the challenge, the decertification of the Biden electors. And secondly, that you send a letter to President Trump and to anyone else you think you can think of that Julian Assange must be pardoned, not just for his life, but for the principles of our Constitution, free speech, and free press. So tomorrow is the day of the big day in Washington. I'll be back with a report for you tomorrow morning. Thanks for joining me, and be sure to sign up for the updates on the LaRouche organization sign-up page. Thanks, and goodbye.